It was not long before Sin would have to move his units elsewhere. With the dropships, he could make an insertion anywhere, but half his soldiers were green humans. It would take too many of them to move aggressively into occupied territory. It was a hard decision, but they had to stay put for the time being. Soon it would be winter, and without resupply, the clanners are in for a rough one. The people enjoyed a good harvest and had more than enough food to keep them going throughout the winter months. The humans continued to cross-train, as well as help with the harvest. Sin had set himself up on a rigid training schedule so that he could work with both the human and clanner soldiers better. By the time Christmas comes, the troops are functioning so well together that soon they will be able to move against another target. Information is ammunition in any military strategy. To work under the radar, literally, the recon teams have to use horses. This makes information slow, but keeps casualties extremely low and detection almost at zero. Pictures are taken from the entire perimeter of the base, from Little Rock, Birmingham, Jackson, Springfield, Atlanta, and all the old military posts in between. It will be almost continuous march to Atlanta. The large airport there is vital to keeping this increased Air Force flying. Sin says, I will lead the main attack group and we will head east. Our first objective will be to liberate a re-education center, he says with a bit of disdain, the Steel Viper clan is using in the city of Jackson. Garand states, the Steel Vipers are one of the smallest clans, but they were able to bid successfully for this region of the world. It will be easier than taking on a strong clan like the Wolf. Sin replies, don't get ahead of yourself. These are clan warriors we're going up against. They are not to be trifled with. Delphine comes in. Our next objective will be... Sin looks at her. You will be not going with us. Your first objective will be to take this area. He points down to the map. The city of Little Rock. Don't be concerned about the name. We're going to need you to set up an outpost in that area. Major highways crisscross this area, one of which heads straight here. This is going to be an early warning and basically a shield for any incoming units from the north. After you settle the refugees, you will continue until you reach this city. He points again. Nashville. This is where we will engage a company of armor and about 1 lance of mechs. He continues, while you're taking care of that, Colonel Garand and I will move on to Birmingham. There we will split and he will take a group south to Montgomery. At this point, we will advance and hit the city from 2 sides at once. Be sure to draw them away from the city when you engage them. The perimeter defenses are something I do not want to deal with when I'm fighting someone else. Is there any questions? Delphine, will there be air cover? Sin responds, Major Davis will be coordinating that with you. He will be staying behind to make sure our support and logistics are taken care of. Delphine asks, are there any dropships in any of these cities? Sin responds, yes, intelligence has reported there are 6 dropships total. There are 2 overlords, 3 Rothguards, and 1 that's reported to be non-functional. Sabotage teams will be in position to pirate them and to knock out any targets of opportunity. Garand asks, are we bidding for this? Sin responds, no, they'll be given a chance to surrender, but if they don't, then do as you must. Delphine then asks, what if they insist on a trial of possession? Sin says, bid everything you've got. No more questions followed, and for the next 3 days, everything is in a state of chaos. Vehicles and soldiers are prepared, equipment is given a 1 more check, and communications are constantly checked and rechecked. It is not long before everyone reports ready. Sin climbs the ladder up into his direwolf with the cold chill of the air biting him. Mech warriors can't wear too much clothing unless they want to pass out from the heat as they sit right on top of the reactor. He settles into the control couch and puts on his neural helmet. He begins startups and feels the helmet begin to interact with his equilibrium, this keeping the mech standing. Then he feels the coolant circulating through his vest. Within a minute, his mech is ready to go. Sin calls up, Tower, this is Able 6, over. This is Tower. Go ahead, Able 6. Prepared to move out, Tower. Are we clear? Roger, Able 6. Your path is clear. Good hunting. Thanks, Tower. Able 6 out. All units fall in on me. Acknowledgement lights blink on as Sin is headed out. It is easy to tell which one Sin is in. He is not the only direwolf, but he had the only army star painted on it. He painted on himself onto the torso of his mech. Where the star is located is one of the hardest parts of the mech, so there's no need to worry too much about it being a target. It is a long march to Jackson. Running his mech hard is no problem. The cool air makes it easy to push the reactor just a little bit harder. Before they even reach Jackson, they receive a message from the tower. This is Sierra 6 calling Able 6. Over. This is Able 6. Go ahead. Relay from Group 2. They have successfully completed their first objective. Over. Oh, that's good news, Sierra 6. Relay that I'm pleased and I'll be looking forward to the next report. Over. Confirmed, Able 6. I will relay it. Sierra 6 out. They pass the Mississippi River and have Jackson in sight within 2 more hours. The city is deserted, but Sin separates a small group near the interchange to interact as an observation post. The march doesn't even slow down until they reach Birmingham, 2 days later. This time, they're engaged by Viper fighter craft before they even reach the city limits. A few quick sorties, and soon the fighters just stop coming. With Birmingham in sight, Sin begins to pull on the reins of his group. He calls, "All right, everyone, this is it. Birmingham will give us the outpost we need to control traffic throughout the region. Fight with honor, but fight to win." As the battle line is finished forming, they can see the city defenses mobilizing. Just as the line begins to move, friendly fighters come in low behind the Allied lines. They barely miss the top of the mechs and scream by and unleash a barrage of missile and cluster bombs. The ground around the base of the city shakes, and a few buildings topple over from the explosion. This gives Sin's attackers the opening they need, and they let loose with their first barrage. Within a minute, the Viper warriors are in retreat into the city. Then the dropship, holding position inside the city, begins to pick targets off from inside. Sin gets on his comms and puts out in broadband, "You can no longer fight, and you have no place to retreat. Surrender, and I will spare your lives. You have my word of honor." The mechs in his group stop short of the city. Of course, no mech pilot would ever enter a city unless they have absolutely no other option. Everyone else takes up position around the city, and soon they get the response. The voice over the radio says, "This is Planet Captain Versetti. Under the terms of surrender, you will not treat my bondsman poorly." Sin responds, "Why would I mistreat bondsmen?" Versetti, "Do you agree with these terms?" Sin, "Well bargained and done." He changes to the company frequency. "All units stand down. They're surrendering." Garand comes in. "This is against clan code. There is no way they would just surrender." Sin responds, "You heard the conversation yourself. The last officer left is a planet captain. Everyone else has probably been killed. It doesn't make sense for your soldiers to fight a helpless battle when you can save them, right? Yes? No?" Garand, "I still do not trust him." Slightly smirking, Sin responds, "Trust must be earned, Colonel. You of all people should understand that. Besides, I would rather take the opportunity for more information." Garand responds, "Understood, sir." Sin changes out. "All mech units are to stay outside the city with the exception of myself and Colonel Garand. We will be proceeding and salvaging immediately. I want the mobile field base set up within an hour. Dropship crews, continue to keep active sensor running. I don't want any nasty surprises." A voice comes over the radio. "Sir, this is Dropship Sling Serpent. There's a large body to our east. Looks like we're going to attack, but they changed their minds." Sin responds, "What do you mean?" Over. The voice then responds again, They halted and turned back east, sir. They're in full retreat, over. Sin, Roger. Keep an eye on that radar. Garand comes in. Are we not going to engage them, sir? They already have a head start, Colonel. It would take us more than an hour to get our forces around the city just to pursue them. By then... Garand, I understand, sir. Then Garand throttles up to enter the city. Sin calls out, keep it slow. These streets are not designed for mechs. For the next day, the forces worked on getting the personnel taken care of and equipment repaired. Most of the Viper's equipment and personnel had already been damaged and or injured. It will take a long time before everyone is ready to go. During this time, Sin receives word that Delphine that take the city and it doubled the expected enemy. Sin looks over the report with a list of 3 dropship, 4 lances of mechs, 2 companies of armor, and 2 companies of infantry. Sin looks at Delphine. I have just received your report and are these numbers correct? Delphine, yes, sir. It seems as though Clan Viper was using the city as a cache site to quickly resupply its front units. Sin, if it was that important, then prepare for counterattack. I doubt the rest of the Viper is going to let this stand that we took such an important location. Delphine, I have been thinking the same thing, sir. However, there has not been a single report from the radar. It may be possible that the loss of both locations have forced them to hold their assaults. Sin, it's more likely that they're marshaling their forces. Keep security tight and begin to transport some of the equipment back to Dallas. Delphine, yes, sir. Before she leaves, Sin, just one more thing. Delphine turns, what is it, sir? Sin, take your time sending the equipment back. We don't need to overwork our pilots and drivers. That will make us lose equipment we can't decide to lose. Delphine, understood. Sin ends the transmission with, Avel 6 out. It takes almost a week to get the city back into fighting shape. There are a few problems with the new recruits. Sin has given everyone strict orders not to be too harsh with them. However, they must do what they must. They are bondsmen, after all. Even though exhausted, Sin climbs into his mech and leads his battle group into Montgomery. There, they head northeast to Atlanta. The plan is simple in that all they have to do is trick the units to come outside of the city, then the second group can hit the city directly. With the infiltration teams already in place at this time to hit them. Once they get within radar range, the scouts radio back about mechs and armor and aircraft leaving the city. They reach the phase line on time and can see the forces advancing towards them. That's when a second group comes under radar range. Sin calls out, attention, Steel Viper forces. This is General Sim, and I am in command of the 2 groups that you are en route to your base of operations. I call upon you to surrender now before your forces are torn apart. A voice comes over. This is Galaxy Commander Mina Javanis. Who are you to demand such a thing? Sin, I am just a man that would rather you surrender and serve under me and have both sides tear each other apart until the war spoils are just piles of metal. Javanis responds, we do not follow your rules of engagement, Freebirth. We are a proud people and would never surrender to the likes of you. Sin responds, pride is a good thing in small doses, but too much will spill blood for no reason. Jovanis, then why do you not challenge me to a trial of possession, Freebirth? Sin responds, because I would rather not have to lose a soldier like you. There is silence on the line for a moment. It is my intention to save as many lives as I can. If all you care about is your pride, and you will throw away the lives of your soldiers for absolutely nothing, I would not do that. As a leader, I would think you would not do that either. Jovanis, so you are rejecting my challenge? Sin takes a deep breath. I see your pride has taken the best of you. I accept your challenge. Jovanis, state your terms. Sin responds, single combat. If you win, my forces will pull back, and if you win, I get command over yours. Jovanis, that is very one-sided bid. Sin, are you afraid of losing your command? Jovanis responds, I will not lose to a free birth. Sin, then the bid is complete. Jovanis, yes, and I will enjoy watching your forces retreat from my territory. Sin, well bargained and done. Step forward and be recognized. They both accelerate towards each other, Sin in his direwolf and Jovan in her Mad Cat Mark II. Both are assault mechs, but the Mark II is designed specifically for long-range fight, while Sin's direwolf is a set of medium and long-range. This means that using the Mark II's dual Gauss rifles, Jovanis can cripple Sin's direwolf and then finish it off with missiles. Sin will have to play this very smart. Sin turns and accelerates to top speed and uses trees and small hills as cover. Jovanis lets loose first, but only grazes Sin's shoulder with her Gauss rifle as it rips through the trees as if they're not even there. Then she lets loose a barrage of missiles that blast into the small hill. Only one missile makes a hit and only does minor damage. Then Sin let loose his own barrage. The Mad Cat is out in the open and most of its missiles hit their target. The Mad Cat staggers a little, but quickly regains its balance. Then Jovanis looks up to the direwolf is nowhere to be seen. She targets the area that the direwolf is heading to, and then she sees it. Ending up right where it was before, the direwolf fires the lasers into Jovanis' leg. The particle lasers burn large scorch marks across Jovanis' armors, but don't cause any major damage. Jovanis steadies herself to take aim, getting the direwolf in her sights. This shot hits Sin in the right shoulder, causing half of the weapons in his right arm to fail. Jovanis backs up, trying to keep her distance, and then realizes something important. That laser shot had set the forest on fire beneath her. The heat gauge began to rise inside her cockpit, and Jovanis began to move her mech to escape the fire. Her torso is turned as she begins to push her throttle forward. That is Sin's opening. He charges Jovanis, firing his missiles first that kept going, trying to get within optimal range of all his weapons. The missiles hit Jovanis broadside, knocking one of the Gauss rifles out of action. As Jovanis turns to face Sin, he lets loose with an alpha strike. This strike is aimed directly at the missile pods at the top of the Mad Cat. With one shot, they explode, making the Mad Cat tumble to the ground. The Mad Cat is on the ground burning as Sin gets within 100 meters. Death in one shot. He turns on his comms. You have been defeated, Galaxy Commander. I would prefer not to kill you. He aims at the cockpit with the left arm. Judgment, he claims. A voice comes over the radio. This is Galaxy Captain Hartina. The trial is over. The battle is lost. Silence for a few seconds. Your orders, sir. Sin responds, get the medical team and dig Jovanis out of there. Contact your base and tell them to cease all hostilities and to surrender into my incoming forces. We're coming in. After retrieving Jovanis and leaving a group behind to salvage the Mad Cat, Sin made a trip into Atlanta. Garan is already in there getting things started. The airport turned out to have a much larger assortment of aircraft than they thought. Most of the large commercial planes had been destroyed and were littering the sides of the runways. Several of the terminals have aerospace fighters at them, along with the remaining Steel Viper dropships. There are over 3 Overlords and 3 of the smaller ones, and one of the 4 the aircraft-looking style, which turned out to be a Leopard. There's also an assortment of bombers, surprisingly. The dozen mech glances, along with an assortment of armor and infantry, makes him smile. It takes almost a month to move equipment and personnel around, even with as many people as they have freed. Most only help in non-military support roles. This makes 65% of his fighting force clanners. With reports of Norfolk and Charleston harbors still have seaworthy vessels, it is decided that that will be the next target. Sin talks to everybody. Once we take Charleston and Norfolk Harbor, we will greatly increase our supply abilities. With access to the oceans, Our access to year-round food supply will be within our grasp. Garand points to a location on the map. What about this place? Fort Bragg. Sin responds, I have sent a recon team into the area, and they have told me that the full-scale bombardment has leveled most of the barracks. The entire base has been abandoned since the first attack. Unfortunately, it's the same for most military facilities in this area. He moves his hand, highlighting the southeast section of the map, crossing southern Georgia and Florida. Garen says, there is still a chance to find survivors and equipment we can use. Sin, make your recon unit and I want complete survey of these points. Document what is to be salvageable and assist any survivors if needed. Garan says, yes, sir. But I will need at least 2 of your interpreters for this mission. Sin, approved. Make your arrangements and be ready to go by 0900 Wednesday. Garan, yes, sir. Sin turns. Now, Delphine, in regards to the refugees we keep taking in. Delphine, there is no problem, sir. Sin, what about the personnel problems in the armed forces? Delphine, still primarily clans, sir, but that is to be expected. The human population is still struggling to learn our language. That has slowed down the humans from entering. Sin, it is not that difficult to learn. Besides, if any of the other clans come calling, at least we can know what they're saying. Delphine, in any case, the majority of humans have decided to remain in support roles. Sin responds, that'll be fine for now. What about those in service? Delphine, progressing rather well. It seems that our methods are quite effective when teaching them. Sin, that's good to know. He looks through some more papers, especially since our next operation will be beginning soon. He pulls up the eastern seaboard of the United States. It is still imperative that we take these 2 areas. If the harbors are still intact, then it will make it far easier for our fishermen. Delphine, what kind of forces are we taking? Sin, until the recon gets back, I can't say. Just make sure everyone's ready to go. Delphine, yes, sir. A week later, the recon team comes back with a report. Sin looks at them. Go ahead, Sergeant. Recon team leader. Sir, I have exceptional news. Not only are both harbors still intact, but it seems like most of the vessels are still in dock. Sin, are you sure? As he starts looking through the pictures. Recon commander. Yes, sir. He shows more images as he pulls them up on screen. As you can see, the docks are nearly full. It looks like in the confusion of the pullout, only a few ships were sunk. In any case, there's nothing blocking the exit. Around 95% of the ships are seaworthy. Sin, this is excellent news. Is there anything else? Recon commander. Yes, sir. It seems like we are not the only ones interested in the harbor. Several civilians are using the harbors to launch their boats from. Sin, slightly confused. So they're civilian? Are there no military forces remaining? Recon commander. Not that we could see. The only military use ship was half sunk outside the harbor. It doesn't even look like they've stripped it for parts yet. Sin. Is there anything in particular I should be aware of before we launch operations? Recon commander. No, sir. It should be a cakewalk. After the commander leaves, Delphine looks at him. You look concerned about something. Sin. I just worry when somebody says the mission will be too easy.